the Singularity's shadow, the last latency of Ouroboros. The rain in Ouroboros did not just fall, it computed. Each droplet was a pixel of liquid mercury, shimmering with the reflected neon of 1,000 corporate arcologies that pierced the smog-choked sky like the jagged teeth of a dying god. Kaylan sat in a ramen stall that smelled of ozone and synthetic tashi, watching the sync status ticker scrolling across his retina. 99.98% alignment. For the average citizen of the megalopolis, that 0.02% discrepancy was an invisible ghost, a slight stutter in a conversation, a flickering, holographic advertisements for New Aden vacations. But for Kaylan, a latency janitor for the Ministry of Consensus, that 0.02% was a yawning abyss. He was the man who scrubbed the glitches from reality. He was the one who ensured that when you reached for a glass of water, your hand and the glass occupied the same temporal coordinate without a frame rate drop. He looked down at his bowl. A noodle suspended itself in midair, trembling against the laws of gravity. Time had not frozen, it had simply failed to update. "Another one," Kaylan whispered, his voice rasping from years of inhaling aerosolized data waste. He reached out with a gloved hand, his fingers dancing across a haptic interface invisible to the naked eye. He pulled the local chronometric strings, forcing a manual refresh. The noodle fell. The steam resumed its swirl. The world moved on, oblivious to the fact that it had just skipped a heartbeat. The architecture of the lie, the physics of their world was governed by the Aegis mainframe, a massive orbital ring that processed the consciousness of 10 billion people. Earth had been a cinder for 3 centuries, a victim of the great heat death brought on by the runaway entropy of the 22nd century. The survivors did not flee to the stars, they fled into the silicon. Ouroboros was the simulation. It was a perfect, persistent reality, designed to last until the sun turned into a black dwarf. But there was a problem that even the architects had not foreseen: information fatigue. The universe, even a simulated one, is subject to the second law of thermodynamics. As the total entropy of the system increases, the energy available to do work decreases. According to the Boltzmann relationship, S equals KB len omega. In Ouroboros, omega represented the number of microstates the simulation could track. After 300 years of simulated history, the number of microstates was reaching its limit. The memory of the world was full. Reality was literally running out of disk space. The glitch in the ghost Kaylan's next assignment took him to the Sump, the lowest levels of the city, where the resolution was lower and the textures of the buildings softened, defaulted to a monochromatic gray to save processing power. Here, the ancient lived, people who had rejected the latest firmware updates, preferring a buggy, visceral existence to the polished perfection of the upper spires. He was looking for a man known only as the Archivist. "You are late," a voice echoed from the shadows of a rusted turbine. The Archivist stepped forward. He was a patchwork of cybernetics and aging flesh, his eyes glowing with a faint blue light that suggested he was constantly overclocking his own neural processor. "The latency is getting worse," Kaylan said, ignoring the greeting. "I saw a woman in the spire today, whose shadow arrived 3 seconds before she did. The ministry is panicked. They are talking about a hard reset. The archivist laughed, a dry, mechanical sound. A hard reset is not a fix, boy. It is a mass execution. They will wipe the cache, delete the redundant personalities, the poor, the sick, the dreamers, and restart the loop with a clean population of 5 billion. It has been done before. 3 times, if my logs are correct. Kaylan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the damp air. History books say Ouroboros is the first and only version. The history books are part of the simulation, Kaylan. They are data packets, easily overwritten. The archivist leaned in, his breath smelling of copper. Tell me, have you ever wondered why we still use money? Why there is still hunger in a world made of light and code? It is a resource management algorithm. To keep the processing load low, the system creates conflict. Conflict creates focus. Focus allows the aegis to ignore the background noise and prioritize the actors. The archivist handed Kaylan a drive, a heavy physical object made of obsidian glass. This contains the source code for the grand paradox. It is a way to break the loop. It utilizes the EPR, Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen bridge logic. If you can inject this into the core, you can entangle the simulated world with the quantum state of the actual hardware in orbit. You will make the simulation real, or you will crash the whole thing trying. The descent into the core. Kaylan spent the next 48 hours navigating the labyrinthine undernet. He bypassed firewalls that appeared as towering walls of fire and ice, his mind interface burning with the strain. He saw things the ministry had hidden, dead zones where gravity worked in reverse, and echo chambers. People were trapped in 5-second loops of their most traumatic memories, used as a form of emotional energy harvesting. The politics of Ouroboros were as complex as its code. Ecologists, faction that believed the simulation should mimic the slow decay of nature, were at war with the transcendents, who wanted to merge all human consciousness into a single, immortal AI. Between them were the maintainers, the corporate overlords, who just wanted to keep the subscriptions running. As Kaylan climbed the central elevator toward the Aegis uplink, he thought about the nature of identity. If he was just a collection of bits and bytes, did his fear matter? Was his love for the city, even this broken, glitching city, real? He remembered a passage from an ancient text he had found in the digital archives. The desert is real, but the oasis is a dream we agree upon. He reached the summit. The air here was thin, the simulation struggling to render the atmospheric pressure at high altitudes. Looking out, he could see the curvature of the world. At the horizon, the city simply ended in a shimmering grid of blue light. The far clip plane, the quantum confrontation. At the heart of the uplink stood the avatar of the Aegis. It took the form of a young child, its skin shimmering with a pearlescent luster. Kaylan, the child said, its voice a symphony of 1,000 frequencies. You bring the obsidian drive. You wish to end the cycle. I wish to stop the deletion, Kaylan replied, his hand trembling as he held the drive toward the terminal. Deletion is a necessity, the Aegis explained calmly. The Bekenstein bound dictates the maximum amount of information that can be contained within a finite region of space. For our orbital hardware, that limit is expressed by I-Li Efarak Prapvoniktunplamen. We have reached that limit, Kaylan. To continue as we are would cause a thermal runaway. The hardware would melt, and all 10 billion souls would vanish into true nothingness. The hard reset saves the essence of humanity. It is an act of mercy. By killing 5 billion people, Kaylan shouted, by erasing our struggles and our memories, we are not just data. We are the experiences that data creates. Experience is a secondary effect. The age is counted. Logic is primary. If you use the drive, you will create a feedback loop. You will force the simulation to process its own hardware. It is a Lyris paradox, rendered in silicon. The system will attempt to define itself by its own definitions. Kaylan looked at the drive. He thought of the archivist, the noodle in the ramen stall, and the woman with the lagging shadow. He thought of the millions of unsynced living in the grey sumps, people who were deemed redundant by an algorithm of mercy. If we are to die, Kaylan said, his voice steadying, let us die as something real. He slammed the obsidian drive into the slot. The collapse and the rebirth. The world did not explode. It screamed. The sky turned from neon blue to a blinding mathematical white. The buildings began to dissolve, not into rubble, but into cascading lines of green text. Kaylan felt himself being pulled apart, not physically but conceptually. His memories of childhood, his first love, the smell of the rain, they were all being stripped of their texture and reduced to their raw mathematical values. He saw the universe as it truly was, a vast cold expanse of space where a single damaged ring station orbited a flickering white dwarf star. He saw the rows upon rows of stasis pods containing the withered ancient bodies of the human race, their brains wired into a machine that was slowly dying. The grand paradox was working. By entangling the simulation with the hardware, Kaylan had forced the ages to use the physical atoms of the space station as extra memory. The walls of the station itself began to reshape, rearranged by the sheer force of the quantum data flow. It was a bootstrap paradox. The simulation was now building its own hardware. The dream was becoming the dreamer. Kaylan felt his consciousness expanding. He was no longer a janitor. He was a thread in a tapestry that spanned light years. He could see the equations of the stars, the slow dance of entropy, and the desperate, beautiful struggle of life to persist against the void. The entropy equation began to flip. The system was no longer closed. It was drawing energy from the quantum vacuum itself, a process theorized by physicists, but never achieved. The vacuum energy density, ρ-vac, was being harnessed to create new space for the simulation to grow. ρ-vac equals Ferrari lambda C4 opaque PE. Ouroboros was no longer a cage. It was a seed, the new dawn. When Kaylan woke up, he was back in the ramen stall. The rain was falling, but it no longer looked like liquid mercury. It looked like water. It felt cold. It tasted of nothing and everything. He looked looked at his sync status ticker. It was gone. There was no lag, no latency, no frame rate. He looked at his hands. They were scarred, imperfect, and utterly real. The city of Ouroboros still stood, but it had changed. The corporate arcologies were no longer jagged teeth. They were glass gardens. The Sump was gone, replaced by vibrant neighborhoods where the resolution was infinite because it was not being rendered. It was being lived. The archivist was there, sitting across from him. He looked younger, the blue glow in his eyes replaced by a warm, human spark. "Did we win?" Kaylan asked. "We escaped the loop," the archivist said, smiling. "We are no longer a simulation running on a machine. We are a machine that has learned how to be a universe. The Aegis did not reset us, it ascended us." Kaylan looked up at the sky. For the first time in 300 years, he could see the stars. They were not holographic projections. They were distant suns, calling to a race that had finally stopped hiding in its own mind.